Welcome to the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Dave Candy, and today's episode is going to be a little bit different. Instead of me asking the questions, this is going to be a rebroadcast of the Pain and Performance Podcast with Dr. Derek Hines, and he's going to be asking me questions about my new book, Chronic Pain. You're not just getting older, you're not crazy, and it's not all in your head. Learn the secrets to get relief. Now, this book is available on Amazon, and many of you listeners who bought it have helped us get it to a #1 bestseller on Amazon. So if you haven't gotten your copy yet, you can go to Amazon and search for it, or we have a forwarding link set up if you visit stlpainexpert.com/book. That will take you right to the page on Amazon. If you're listening from the St. Louis area, you can also contact us at the office at Movement for Life at 314-941-3970, and we can arrange a time for you to come pick one up or send one out to you directly. So without further ado, let's cut to the Pain and Performance Podcast with Dr. Derek Hines.
You are listening to the Pain and Performance Podcast with Dr. Derek Hines.
Hey everyone, Derek Hines here. Welcome to the podcast where I'll share with you the patterns, insights, research, and technologies that we use in my own pain and performance practice to help people improve their health, speed their healing, and increase their longevity. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy it. Hey, all my movers and shakers. I never quite know how to start these things, but nonetheless, my guest on today's show was Dr. Dave Candy, who has been a practicing physical therapist since 2008. And Dr. Candy and I are kindred souls in the viewpoint of treating like the whole person and taking that whole person approach to healing pain and problems. Dr. Candy's got every certification you can think of, did a 2.5-year fellowship in orthopedic manual therapy, which means he does a lot of healing with his hands. He's got certification in dry needling and done a lot of studying on the science of pain, which leads a lot into today's podcast. We talked a lot about Dr. Candy's new book, Chronic Pain. You're not getting old, you're not crazy, and it's not all in your head, which my patients and all of you listening to this have heard many, many times. Dr. Candy's book is a really good guide on what chronic pain is, how we can start to change chronic pain and start getting on the right track whenever we're addressing that. He does a wonderful job of breaking down and giving some very practical tips, and we dive into some of the ins and outs about what chronic pain is, what does that mean for us as individuals, and I think there's some great tidbits in here, which means that there's going to be some people you want to share this with. So click that little button on the podcast player right now, open your messaging app, and send this to your friend or family member who's been talking about pain. Share this episode. I promise they're going to get some value out of this. So please check out Dr. Dave Candy at drdavecandy.com, and his book Chronic Pain is a really, really good book. So please enjoy our conversation, the ins and outs of chronic pain and how we can address that and how we can start to get on that healing path. So. Dr. Dave Candy, thanks for joining us, man.
I'm glad to be here, Derek.
I'm very excited to have this conversation. I did a quick deep dive into the book. Congratulations, man. That's very exciting times. I'm sure it's been a bit of a whirlwind getting to this point.
It has been, it took months to write, but it was years and years and years of knowledge that I just had bound up in my head and had intentions to get out at some point. And, finally the pandemic bought me some time to get this thing out. So.
Yeah. So let's get straight. Why write the book? Let's start there. Let's dive into, everybody's got these ideas and stuff. Why actually put that and take all the headache and time and energy to actually go through the painstaking process of writing a book?
Yeah, painstaking process to write a book about chronic pain. And that it was a painstaking process, but, I found myself answering the same questions from patients with chronic pain, which is primarily the people that I see anymore, people who haven't found other solutions. And the stories, they just sound so similar over and over and over. And in the book, I tell a story about a patient named Mary, but that very well could be a Susan or a Bethany or even a William. The story is the same, and I hear the same things over and over, and people have the same questions and same concerns, and they may come out in different words or different, concerns, but basically people want to know what's going on. Why hasn't anyone been able to help me? Am I destined to live like this forever? And can you help me? And those are basically the questions that people ask in some form or another. And so I wanted to get some of those answers out so that, the people who I will never be able to meet here in St. Louis will have some means to get those answers. And then the people that I am able to meet, they kind of have some base knowledge coming in, and we can work more specifically on their problems than just addressing the general questions.
Yeah, I think whenever we start talking chronic pain, it's such a loaded word now. Like it's so, there's so much baggage behind that now that, when people hear chronic pain, I think immediately people jump to, whatever their history with it is, opioids, fear mongers, insurance scams. Like chronic pain has such a loaded, kind of connotation behind it. When you're talking with patients about chronic pain, what do you find is the biggest belief about chronic pain that you're getting from them?
Well, I think the biggest belief is that you're just getting older. You're going to have to deal with it, or you're just going to have to learn to accept this. And that's really, that's part of the title of the book. You're not just getting older. You're not crazy, and it's not all in your head. Those are the things that people are told by family members, friends who just don't understand, or even doctors. You wouldn't believe some of the things I've heard from, well, you probably would, but other people wouldn't believe some of the things that I've heard that they've said their doctors have said to them.
Yeah, whenever we're looking at that, I get the same thing. Patient comes in, you have arthritis, the pain that you're feeling is normal. You're just going to have to deal with it, or take the medicine that I gave you. It's a very, very eye-opening thing about our culture. And a lot of that's in America. I think in different areas, you don't find it nearly as prevalent to just deal with pain. I see what you're saying whenever we're talking about the belief behind the pain. And I related a lot with some of the beginning part of the book. And this is kind of a self-serving question, but I'll serve it up to you anyway. So when you get somebody, is there anyone out there that should just live with pain?
Well, I don't think it's a necessity. That if you want to have a life where you're not restricted by your pain, you should be able to do it. Now, is pain normal? Yeah, it's actually a good thing. Pain is what tells us if we're in danger, if we're going to hurt ourselves, but that's acute pain that, it says take your finger away from that hot stove, or move your foot because you're stepping on a thumbtack. That's normal and good pain that you live with day in, day out, possibly from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed without any relief, pain that stops you from doing the things you enjoy or spending time with family members or friends. That kind of pain is not normal, and that kind of pain you shouldn't have to live with.
What are the things that you find that most often will lead to a chronic pain situation? Is there certain characteristics that people can kind of be looking out for that tends to increase the likelihood that somebody would end up in chronic pain?
There are, and largely, they tend to be more psychosocial issues. Not necessarily, again, you're not crazy. It's not saying you're making it up, but they tend to be things like stress or anxiety or past traumas from either childhood or a relationship with a spouse or significant other, or just someone who's constantly worried, constantly is fearful of the worst case scenario, and they just keep playing all the possible outcomes over and over and over in their head. And when you're thinking about the pain and how bad it is and what it stops you from doing and wondering if it's ever going to go away over and over and over and over, you're kind of recreating that pain memory. And so, your body is pretty good actually at healing itself in about 3 months from even some pretty substantial injuries. So the things that I see and that research predicts are most associated with chronic pain are really anxiety, depression, and like negative outlook.
Yeah, and I think that, again, this kind of goes back to a little bit of how we're taught at a pretty early age. Like, those are the stuff we're not supposed to talk about, right? In America, it's like those are kind of brush those off to the side. Let's not bring those up. Those are uncomfortable conversations. And I think I love that you put that in there. There's so many books on chronic pain that show like this magic bullet stretch that's going to be the best thing ever, or this new technique that we've discovered that's going to be the end all cure all of pain. And I love that you kind of put in there like, no, look, here's really where this stuff comes. Don't try and take a complicated issue and make it simple. Unfortunately, pain is not simple. Chronic pain is a complicated issue.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I mean, one of the first things that I learned even before I got into practice is there is no magic bullet, that there's no one stretch, no one pill, no one surgery, no one injection, no one thing that works for every person. Overall, you can look at groups of people and say, as a whole, this treatment tends to work for 99 people out of 100 with these same signs and symptoms. But if you're that one person, it doesn't do you a darn bit of good. So, we kind of use the odds and the statistics to drive us in the right direction. But, largely the people that I see is not the 8 out of 10 that the thing does work for. It's the 2 out of 10 that the thing doesn't work for. And so kind of have to take a little more of an individualized approach.
So, and those are kind of tough. Like, would you actually tell people, hey, start working on this on the front end? If you do find yourself being, a bit more fearful of these things, you carry more stress, you're kind of worried a little bit more, you've had history of kind of chronic pain issues. Would you tell them to start with addressing some of those kind of psychosocial beliefs, stress, anxiety issues? Is that the first steps for them, or would they go about it kind of from a different angle to get started?
Well, I think there's simultaneous action. I don't think there's a first step and a second step, because pain is not in your body, but it's also not all in your head. And you need to work on the physical component, but if there is some anxiety or stress or other psychosocial issues going on, you need to deal with them in some means or another. And that doesn't necessarily mean going to a psychologist or getting anxiety medication or something like that. Like, sometimes it's as simple as scheduling some time to do something that you enjoy, doing something that's relaxing, shutting off your TV for an hour before bed and breathing or meditating or listening to some calming music, even just spending time doing deep breathing the right way, which is in the book on how exactly to do that. It has huge pain relieving effects. And so, there are some things that you can do on your own to control stress and anxiety. And those things are in those tips are in the book. But there are also times when it's appropriate to reach out to someone who that's their field, that they treat psychosocial issues.
Yeah, that's a good question. Do you know of a way that somebody could actually, like, if I've been suffering with chronic pain, I had a doctor who told me that, I've got, some degenerative disc disease and stuff. Is there a way that somebody can actually like fill something out to find out if they tend to, if some of their pain might be coming from a bit more of the psychosocial aspects of it, of the pain system as a whole?
Yeah, there are like surveys that you can fill out um, that will predict scores of either anxiety or depression. Kind of the quick screen is, have you felt, depressed or sad, for more than 30 days, or are you losing interest in things that you used to enjoy? Is life just kind of, you go through the motions of life, but it's not really exciting, it's not really vibrant anymore. It just kind of seems like you're struggling to get through the basics of survival every day. And if one of those two things is true, then there may be some either major or lower level depression going on. um, as far as anxiety, just some quick, simple screens that people can do. If you tend to worry about things, if you tend to ruminate on things over and over in your head, if you have trouble getting your mind to shut off at night when you're going to sleep, that all the possible scenarios that could happen the next day are playing through your head, then there might be an anxiety issue. I ask people with anxiety issues, think about all the things that you've ever worried about in your entire life. And then think about how many of those have actually come true. And when they think about that, it's like, it's a really small percentage. And I can't put a number on it, but like, just people create all these potential hazards that in reality are unlikely to ever come to fruition.
Yeah, I forget if it was like Mark Twain or one of those guys who said something like, I've experienced a great many tragedies in my life, most of which never happened.
I think that was Mark Twain, actually.
So yeah, let's get into a little bit of these kind of pain points. I love so chapter 5. I immediately like went through, and chapter 5 is labeled no pain or no gain, like KNOW pain, like actually no pain, or you won't have the gains in that. I love some of that stuff, and so when we're getting to that point, what are those maybe top, you got some awesome points in there. What are those top like 2 or 3 things, your kind of elevator pitch of, hey, look, at least start with these couple. You said the deep breathing stuff, which I know many patients who come in and have told me like, oh, I looked up this exercise or I looked up this stretch. I don't know if I've ever had a patient come in and say, oh, I looked up this breathing exercise because my back was hurting. I don't know if I've ever heard that, but so you mentioned some of that. Let's dive into that. But if you have a couple other little points on some of that stuff, I'd love to dive into a few of those kind of chapter 5 recommendations.
Yeah. Well, with the breathing, just to address that first off, when people seem to be stressed or anxious, or particularly people who have neck pain or pain in their shoulders, kind of at the base of their neck, the first thing that I go to is typically breathing, because a lot of your kind of accessory breathing muscles that you use when you're exerting yourself really hard, when you're, so to speak, running from an angry tiger that's chasing you, which is really what a pain or anxiety or fight or flight response is it's your body responding to a potential danger situation when it may not be that dangerous. And a lot of people, when they take a deep breath, kind of what they do is they make the breath sounds like, and you can hear it, you can see their chest rise and fill with air, and a lot of times their belly goes in, which is just the opposite of actually what should happen. When you're breathing, your main breathing muscle is your diaphragm, which is right underneath your ribs. And if you're pushing your belly in, you're actually pushing air out of your lungs, which is the opposite of what you're trying to do when you take a deep breath. So really the best way, and there's no video on this podcast, but is to put one hand on your belly and another hand on your chest. And when you take a deep breath, don't think about breathing in, don't think about breathing out. Just think about making your belly rise and fall. And don't think about what's happening with the breath. Air is going to flow. You're going to change volume in your lungs, and air is going to move in and it's going to move out without you even thinking about it. Just like it does 99.9% of the day when you're breathing when people don't ask you to take a deep breath.
I love it. Yeah, and I do like there's been some kind of people who have talked a little bit about kind of the Wim Hof style, breathing. Are you familiar with some of his stuff?
Yeah.
So I've had quite a few patients that I'm like, look, if you're going to at least do some breathing, at least add the little cold plunge in after. So, but I love it. You see that all the time. People are kind of breathing through the chest and the shoulders, and all of the scalene muscles in their neck are tight. All of the shoulders and chest are all kind of pulled forward. And we see that posture, and we don't think of it as breathing related. We think of that as that hunched over, stressed or pain posture position. And we see people kind of get in that. And, I don't think many people realize that if they started practicing their breathing. So when you tell people that, are you telling them to practice every day or?
Yeah, ideally. And it's a really calming thing to do too. Whether you just spend 5 or 10 minutes a day, before bedtime or first thing in the morning, or, you set aside 5 minutes at your lunch hour to just shut your office door and go somewhere else where you're isolated from other people, and forget about what happened in the morning, forget about what's going to happen in the afternoon, and just kind of live in the moment. And I mean, that kind of brings us on to other kind of fixing the pain system topics. That anxiety is basically living in the future, depression is basically living in the past, and the more you can just be present in today and this moment, and not thinking about all the things that potentially could happen, not worrying about all the things that happened in the past that you can't change, and just worrying about what you can do right now, today, at this time, because that's the only time that you can be present in.
Right. Yeah. You remind me of a patient of mine who she came in, she was telling me she had suffered from pretty significant radiating pain into her arm. And she always had trouble kind of like cooking and stuff like that. And over the holidays last year, her daughter and her husband went and volunteered at a food shelter. And she came in the next week or so, asked her how she was feeling. Hey, I'm feeling much better. Everything's doing well. Oh, awesome. Have you been doing some of the home exercises? No, actually, I hadn't been doing much of that. We just been kind of, helping out, delivering food. I went and worked at a food shelter. She was like, I did that, and working with those people and talking with them about like how they ended up where they are, just being there with them. I got up the next day and just couldn't help but smile. She's like, I've been feeling a standard deviation better ever since. And it's just like bringing you into that moment of interacting with someone, finding out how somebody else is feeling, and getting out of your head, which is so easy to get stuck in today. So I love that. Let's jump into a couple of the little tips that you have in there. So breathing is a great one. What would be some of those other kind of starting points for somebody who's trying to get started on the right road with chronic pain?
Well, sure. If we're just talking about general system tips, not specific to any one body part, sleep is a huge thing. That when you're not sleeping well, and people probably know this from experience, you tend to be more grumpy. Things get on your nerves quicker, whether it be a spouse or children or people that you work with. And your stress system can only absorb so much, whether that's physical stress from an injury, whether that's social stress from the people around you or the environment that you're in, or whether that's psychological stress from what's going on in the own inner workings of your mind. Think of it like filling up a pitcher, and if it's filled up 80% with those psychological things or hormonal issues in the body, or other things like that, then you only have a small capacity that you can deal with physical things before it starts to spill over. And so a lot of what we do kind of on the general approach is just getting that baseline level down so that people have kind of more room for error before, I can walk for 10 minutes, my back starts to hurt. But if I take out, maybe some of the other stresses, I sleep better, I eat better, I bring my blood pressure down, then, maybe I can walk for 30 minutes because I don't have so many other things taking up what my body's trying to deal with, and it can deal with those things better. So, that kind of brings us on to some other general topics that you talked about. Eating right, nutrition plays a huge part. That, literally, you are what you eat. The proteins that you eat make up the structure of your body. The vitamins and the minerals, they give you the catalyst to run chemical reactions. Carbohydrates give you energy. You need the fats to help absorb some of the vitamins. So what you put in your body makes a huge difference. And I think we kind of neglect that sometimes, how important that actually is.
Yeah, that's the one thing that those two areas. I love how, when we start talking about these things, you realize like, hey, look, great minds think alike, I guess. When people come in and they tell me they've had a flare up, they always try and think of like the thing that they did. Like, I didn't lift anything. I didn't do any of that stuff. You're like, well, how'd you sleep? What did you eat? Oh, well, we went and ate Chinese food and, I kind of slept bad. Like, they started this massive inflammatory reaction in their body, but that's not the stuff we jump to. We jump to the activity stuff. Those are perfect points. For sleep, I forget what it is. I read, Matthew Walker's book, and he's got some amazing statistics on, how many people are getting good sleep, and it's not good. It's not a good number of us in America. And you've got some really awesome kind of points in there. For somebody who's suffering from sleep, is there an easy thing that they could start like tomorrow to try and get better sleep?
Well, yeah, if you Google sleep hygiene, you'll find tons of tips, but some general things are keeping activities that shouldn't be done in the bedroom outside of the bedroom. So your bedroom, your body should be primed to go to sleep when you enter that room. And so if you're working, if you're reading things, if you're arguing with people in the bedroom, those are all things that your body associates with wakefulness. And if you walk in that room and it says, what am I supposed to do here? Is it a time to sleep here? Is it a time to work here? Is it a time to argue in here? Your body kind of has to figure out what to do. Versus if you sleep in your bedroom and then you do all your waking stuff in some other area, then your body, it becomes like a Pavlov's dog reaction. You see the bedroom and you get tired, you get sleepy. So that's a huge thing. Turning off blue lights like cell phones or TV screens or computer screens within an hour before bed, those kind of prime your visual system into a wakeful mode. And when you can remove some of those stimuli right before bedtime and do some sort of calming routine, read a book, listen to some calming music, just talk to a spouse or a partner about what's going on during the day. Drink a warm cup of non-caffeinated tea. Those are all things that can kind of help get you in sleep mode. And those are things kind of more sleep related, but what you do the rest of the day too. Sleep doesn't just happen at night or in the hour before you're getting ready to go to sleep. If you're drinking caffeine throughout the day, you're going to be awake. If you're not getting any activity, your body doesn't burn off any of the energy that it needs, and so it's not going to feel tired at night. So just getting some sorts of physical activity in during the day. And I try to avoid the word exercise as much as possible because it kind of has this negative, well, exercise has to hurt connotation. Get out and move, garden, go for a walk, clean your house, vacuum, do something where you're moving your body for 20 minutes or more. And if you prefer to do some like traditional exercise, going to the gym or lifting weights or swimming, or that's all great too. But if that's not for you, do something to be active, because people weren't made to sit in desks and chairs or on Zoom or Skype these days for hours and hours and hours and hours. We were made to hunt and gather and do things that our ancestors did. And just because we have all these new amenities doesn't mean that our genetics have changed.
Yeah. Do you think that part of all of the kind of increase in chronic pain is because our body doesn't know what's going on. Our body doesn't understand this modern environment. Do you think that's got a fair amount to do with why we're seeing so much more chronic pain these days? Are we seeing more chronic pain these days? I guess is a good question also.
Well, you know the answer to that one. Yeah, the numbers on chronic pain have just, the numbers of opioids that are used to control chronic pain is getting out of control. The cases of chronic pain are skyrocketing. And even though we have better medical technology, better imaging, better surgical techniques, more research than we've had at any point in history, the chronic pain trend is going in the wrong direction. That all these advances really haven't helped things. And some of it I do think is related to the environment that we live in, especially in America, that go, 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 go mentality. You got to do better than your parents. And if you work harder, then you're going to be successful. The American dream, so to speak. It spurs anxiety. It spurs people working till they're dog tired, and then they have no capacity to deal with other things. So I think
you'll appreciate this. Sorry to cut you off. I had an interesting discussion with a few of the friends that are in London, and they were talking about coming to America and how even walking on the street, they were like, one, y'all don't walk anywhere. Like they were like, y'all don't go anywhere. Everywhere y'all go, y'all jump in a car. They were like, two, when you are walking on the street, there's somebody who's like walking behind you as fast as they can to try and pass you up. And they were like, y'all don't just like, okay, I'm walking down the street, I'm going for a walk. It was a very strange observation to hear from someone overseas. But I do think it's right. Everything that we're doing has to be like fast, efficient. Like there is no decompression time, and we're not moving. Like I feel like you can kind of pair those together in some way in a lot of countries that are much healthier than us. Look, they're walking more than us, and because they're walking more than us, they're buffering some of those stressful activities with this kind of, rhythmic meditative walk where, they're just going from place to place, but it's a nice little buffer zone for them. So, I love some of those simple techniques that we can do, for us in America. I feel like it's going to be kind of tough. Like, are we going to, one, do you think there's a point where we could get to, I don't want to say the end of chronic pain. I feel like that's a very tagline type of statement, but can we get a handle on chronic pain to the point where it's not affecting, the generations of people that it is right now?
I think we can, but I think it will take generations. And I mean, it's a public health issue. That, like you said, some of the beliefs around chronic pain, or pain in general, really, are formed from a very young age. What your parents tell you and the way that they react when you fall. Someone who their mom comes up and coddles them and says, "Oh, you poor thing," versus someone who says, "Get up and walk it off." I mean, they're probably going to have very different outlooks on pain. And that's not to say that one is necessarily better and the other is worse. but they're definitely going to have different outlooks on things. And I think our generation and a lot of the generations before have been raised with the outlook that when you're having pain, it's your body telling you that something is injured or damaged. And it's actually not that. I mean, pain is something that it's a message that your brain sends to your body saying, hey, there's something potentially hazardous going on here. You should maybe do something about that. And that's not to say that pain is that it's all in your head. But the hardcore pain neuroscientists would say all pain is created in the brain. And, to some extent, that's true only as much as, if a tree falls in a forest, does it make a sound? That if you didn't have a brain, then you wouldn't experience pain, but you also wouldn't be living. So pain is something that is, the output of pain is something that's 100% created by the brain, but it's in response to messages that are coming in from your body, from your hormonal system, as well as things that are going on inside your head. So to say it's 100% in your brain or all in your head, I think is a misnomer. But just that belief that pain equals tissue damage, we need to get rid of that. Otherwise, chronic pain is not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, one of the things that we talk about a lot is some of the studies done on imaging, where they were doing imaging to show like how much damage was in the body and then how much pain people felt, kind of a blinded study. And then when they follow those studies up and they get the same people to fill out a stress and anxiety questionnaire, we find the actual damage along the spine was a coin flip. It didn't point to anyone having more or less pain or anything like that. But as you were saying earlier, the stress and anxiety had an exact correlation. People with high stress and anxiety tended to have much more pain. People with low stress and anxiety tended to have much less pain. So, I get where they're coming from when they say like the pain is in the head argument. But I agree. It's what we were saying earlier. It's just so much more complex to that. When we try and boil it down to these single things, these single headlines or these single, outputs, and we try and put pain in this little box, it's like there's too much involved in this human experience of experiencing pain. I would love to hear what you say whenever you talk to a patient and they say like, "Are you telling me my pain's in my head?"
Well, I kind of, when I start going down this route, and I've had this conversation enough, that I learned from the very beginning that just to preempt that before it even comes up, because they're going to think it when you start talking about how your brain, creates pain as a response or basically a message to tell your body to do something about it. I mean, my natural inclination hearing that would be, are you saying I'm crazy? And also they've heard it before. More than likely they've heard it before. And when you start talking down that route, they start thinking, hey, you're just like them. I thought you were different, but you're just like them. And so I kind of expect that people are going to have that. And so I say, now, before you think that I'm telling you that you're crazy or that you're making it up, you're not. Your pain is absolutely real.
I love it. Now you can like say that and follow that up with, by the way, here's the book on chronic pain and why it's not just in your head. There's a lot more to it than that.
That's true. Yes.
So this is kind of some self-serving questions because I'm in the middle of the same process. So what was your writing process like? What was your kind of day-to-day? When did you write? How did you structure that with patient care and all your other responsibilities?
I have to block off time to do it. I really have to kind of get in a zone. It's pretty much early in the morning. I'm not one who can operate late at night. Like I'm fried after about 7 or 8 p.m. After, even on weekends, I don't do my best work in the evenings. I can get up early in the morning and I have no problem with that. But I think it's really whether you're more of a night owl or whether you're more of a morning person like me, just finding the time when your creative juices are flowing and just blocking off that time to get stuff down on paper. Because it all makes sense to me in my head, having my own past experiences, but trying to put it in terms that the everyday average person who hasn't had a medical background, who may be experiencing chronic pain at the moment, to put it in words that they're going to understand and relate to. You really have to do it at a time when you're just at your best.
Do you write every day?
No.
Kind of block off segments for it.
I may have days or weeks where I'm just in the zone and I'll do a lot of it, and then other days where it just sits untouched for a week or two. And actually, I had the outline on my desk over a year ago. I decided that I wanted to do this, but just being busy with other responsibilities and other things, never really had time. And then boom, we're all sitting at home for a couple months and like, here's your sign.
Yeah. Whenever I shot out a quick little request for any questions whenever we were going to have this conversation, and I got a lot on headaches and I got a lot on knee pain, and you've got a wonderful section in there on kind of headaches and TMJ stuff. If somebody's suffering with headaches and they're saying, hey, look, I want to try and get this under control on my own, what are the couple of things they can start with some of that stuff? What are those little, hey, at least try these couple of things, and if that doesn't work, give me a call?
Sure. Well, the things we already talked about are certainly things, the breathing, the stress management. I'd say stress management and nutrition are huge in terms of headaches, as well as posture. And if you work at a desk, if you work at a computer, getting set up well at your computer is important. Your chair matters. If you're spending $20 on a chair, if you bought it in 1972, it's probably time to get a new chair. A good office chair is probably going to cost you in the order of $100 to $200. You can get something pretty reasonable for that range. You may not need the $5,000 Cadillac chair, but the $20 chair probably isn't going to be good for you either. So actually investing in your body and getting a good office chair if you're going to be spending several hours a day in it. Adjusting your monitors to the right height. You shouldn't be looking up at it. You shouldn't be leaning forward over it. Arm rests. Arm rests are huge. And I mean, the typical questions that I ask people, kind of tongue in cheek, because that's a little bit my style, but like, does your chair have a backrest on it? Yes, it does. Do you use it? No. You should. That's why it's called a backrest, so you can rest your back. And does your chair have armrests on it? Yes, it does. Do you use them? No. You should. Basically your arms, they hang from your neck by muscles. And a lot of headaches can be caused by muscle tension in your neck, as well as places in your head, but the muscles in your neck can be a huge factor affecting headaches. And if you're carrying around your arms all day and you're holding them up, typing on a keyboard all day, and they're constantly sitting there hanging from your neck, pulling compression down on your spine, putting tension on the muscles, putting tension on the nerves that run through your neck and shoulder region, it's going to add up over time. And it's just taking those 6 or 8 hours where you're sat at a desk and unloading, taking that load off for a few hours makes a huge difference.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, that's so many people today. What's your position on stand-up desks?
I think they're good. I think the adjustable desks are better. That sitting all day is not good. Standing in one position all day is not good, but having the ability to go from sit to stand, to walk around a little bit, come back and sit down. You get tired of sitting, you stand up for a few hours. The ability to change positions, I think, is wonderful. Standing for 8 hours, just as bad or maybe even worse than sitting.
Yeah, I got you. I get the stand-up desk question all the time. I'm like, if you're standing but you're still kind of hunched over in a bad position, that you're trading one problem for another. But you're gonna probably hate this question. Are there any stretches or anything like that you tell people with headaches?
The question you get every someone hears your physical therapy. Hey, is there a stretch for that?
Right.
For headaches. The biggest thing, and it's not really even an exercise, but is keeping your head above your shoulders and tucking your chin in. And really, you do that more hours out of the day than you don't, and your headaches are probably going to be substantially better. There are some things, in fact, I have a few video blog posts out about this, that there are some stretches in your neck that can actually make your neck pain worse, and they're pretty common stretches. The one where you can't see it on the podcast, but where you stretch one ear over to the shoulder, that can be a good stretch for some problems, and it can also be a less than good stretch for other problems. That sometimes people have one shoulder that's higher and one shoulder that's lower. And if your pain is on the shoulder that's lower, and your pain is because the muscle is overstretched already and the nerve bundle that runs through your shoulders is overstretched already, and you think, gosh, that really hurts, I should stretch it, you're probably not helping the problem. In fact, you might even be making it worse. So to give just, hey, this stretch is good for all neck pain, it's like saying, hey, this pill is good for all inflammatory problems. It's very general and it's very hard to say, but moving regularly and keeping your head centered over your shoulders and your chin tucked in are probably the closest kind of carte blanche things that I can give you without having a specific problem.
Yeah, actually kind of jumping in on somebody. Man, I love the book. I really think there's so much practical information in there that, anybody who's grabbing that and looking at it, there's very easy places for them to start. And I really like that it's kind of mixing in some of the health information that I don't think we're talking about a lot. I don't think we get a lot of, when we're looking at some of these things, a lot of it is a little bit starting to reprogram the brain and our beliefs and our thinking around chronic pain, and then getting into, some of the actual kind of treatment stuff. Any kind of takeaways that you'd like the listeners to dive into or look for? I'd love to kind of hear some of that. And also, when is it time for somebody to seek out new treatment? When is it time for them to find a professional to help them out whenever they're suffering from chronic pain? Is it when it gets too bad? Is it when it's been around for a certain period of time? When are they supposed to do those things?
Well, to answer that question, because that one's, pretty simple. If what you're doing is not working and you've tried it for more than a few weeks, try something else. You keep repeating the same actions and you're going to keep getting the same results. So if what you're currently doing, if you're not satisfied with the situation that's bringing you to, do something else. And find someone that you trust. Find someone that other people have had success with. Reach out to other healthcare professionals or other friends or family that get recommendations, and don't stop looking until you find the right person that you can associate with and that understands your problem, and that is willing to take the time to answer all the questions that you have and not just kind of brush you off and say, yeah, and try this or that or the other, especially if it's chronic pain. That again, we're talking about the 20% that the usual treatment doesn't work for, not the 80% that it does. that's that question. As far as just general takeaway points, I would say don't lose hope. That just because you've suffered for years or decades, it doesn't mean that life has to be like that. It doesn't mean that life is going to be like that. If it's been 20 years, is it going to go away in a day or a week? Probably not. But it doesn't mean that with the right pathway that you can't get to a lifestyle that's going to be worth living. Don't lose hope. And if you haven't found the right solution, then try something different and keep looking until you find it.
Beautiful. I couldn't agree more. I think that's a beautiful way for people to kind of continue to keep stepping forward. Do one thing, something will help. I don't think it's part of the normal human condition for us to be in chronic pain. And so just because one person can't help you, that doesn't mean you can't be helped.
I hear that a lot too, is that patients will say that they've been dismissed from this doctor or that doctor. They said there's nothing else they can do for me. And just because there's nothing else that someone can do for you, it doesn't mean there's nothing else that can be done.
Well, Dr. Dave, thank you. There's some awesome nuggets in this conversation. I think people are going to really enjoy some of this stuff. Where can our listeners find out a little bit more about you, a little more about the clinic? Where can they get the book at? Give us some of your hit points there.
Sure. Well, you can find out about me. I've got both my clinic site as well as my personal site. M4LPT, that's Movement for Life Physical Therapy.com. Or you can go to my website, drdavecandy.com, drdavecandy.com. The book is available on Amazon, or we have a forwarding link set up as well at M4LPT/book, and that will take you right to the Amazon page.
And the book is Chronic Pain. You're
not just getting older, you're not crazy, and it's not all in your head.
I love the subtitles. It couldn't get it. Can't get any better than that. All of the content, all of the links that were mentioned will be in the show notes. Y'all check out Dr. Dave's book. It's a really, really practical book. If you know somebody who's dealt with chronic pain, I highly recommend you checking this book out. I really enjoyed the read with it. I think the content in there is very practical and usable for everybody who's been in that boat. So Dave, thanks a lot. This has been a great conversation. I'm excited. I wish you tons of success with the book. I hope that a lot of people get help out of this thing.
So do I. That's really the reason I wrote it. So, and it's been great. And thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. What an amazing conversation. I hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget to check out Dr. Candy's book, Chronic Pain. You're not getting old, you're not crazy, and it's not all in your head. drdavecandy.com. Really, really good read. Very easy read with some very practical stuff in there. So please check that out. I know Dr. Candy spent a lot of time and research in there. You'll get a lot of value out of that. So please check out the book. Please share today's podcast with anyone that we can get help to. I really hope that we can get some good information into the hands of some friends and family. And don't forget to leave us a review. We will be doing a drawing every week for the best review that we have. And our review this week comes from CD Blanche. I love the fact that Dr. Hines takes it further than just physical therapy. He genuinely cares about the longevity of his patients and offers his knowledge to further educate people on how to live a better life. This podcast inspires you to make better decisions concerning your health and well-being. Thank you, CD. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for listening to today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. Please share this information with someone who needs it. We hear it all the time from patients and friends and family that say they wish they heard this information earlier so they could have started this journey towards better health, a better life, a more pain-free life sooner. So if you know someone who can benefit from this information, please send the show to them. Also, you can get all of today's show notes and topics discussed at DerekHines.com/podcast. And for any treatment or pain inquiries, please go to acadianapain.com. Thanks again for listening. It means the world to me. Thanks for all of the feedback and any reviews that y'all can give. I really appreciate it. And remember, just try and get a little bit healthier every day.
That was a great episode, and I had a lot of fun recording it. Now, if you'd like to pick up your own copy of my new book, Chronic Pain, You're Not Just Getting Older, You're Not Crazy, and It's Not All in Your Head, then you can visit stlpainexpert.com, and that will take you straight to the page on Amazon where the book is listed. Thanks, and have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you live in the St. Louis area and would like Dr. Candy's help to find a solution to your pain, visit our website at stlpainexpert.com. Email Dr. Candy at dave@stlpainexpert.com or call Dr. Candy's clinical practice, Movement for Life, at 314-941-3970. Movement for Life offers free consultations called discovery visits to people who are serious about discovering how they can relieve their pain and get back to the happy, healthy, and active lifestyle they deserve. If you're listening from outside the St. Louis area but would still like some help, feel free to contact us to learn more about our virtual health coaching. Regardless of where you live, please share our podcast with anyone you know who would benefit from learning more about pain and what can be done to relieve it. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or your other favorite podcast platform so you get notified when we release a new episode. Thanks again for listening, and we hope you'll enjoy us again soon.